welcome to Turn the Page, the official podcast of the Syosset Public Library.
This is Jessica with Syosset Library's Turn the Page podcast, and today's guest wrote an amazing legal thriller called All Her Little Secrets. And I'm gonna let her introduce herself. But this book was so good, and it's been getting a lot of amazing buzz, and I would say rightfully so. So without any further ado, please introduce yourself and tell us about your background and how this book came about.
Thank you, Jessica, for having me. I'm Wanda Morris, and I am an employment lawyer by day and a writer by night. I have worked in corporate America for, the bulk of my entire legal career, over a couple of decades. And I wrote this book, out of a desire to always create stories. I've always wanted to be a writer. I've always enjoyed books and writing, but I was encouraged to get a real job, so to speak. And I never lost my love for words and for writing. And so that's kind of where this book comes from.
This is your debut novel?
Yes.
Wow. So I think, definitely there's a lot of it. You certainly know your way around legal matters and corporate matters. So I suppose the real job that they wanted you to get prepared you to write this, but the story is very good. And so this is the story of Ellice Littlejohn, and she is pretty much barricaded herself in almost like this persona of, this stony-faced lawyer. She's a Black woman. She's in Atlanta, and she's working for this company. And it's not a spoiler to say that the first thing that really happens in the book is she walks in to find someone who she's worked with for a long time and has been involved with dead in his office. And the way that she handles that initially might confuse some people, but as the story goes on, you begin to understand why she would do what she did. So did you always have in mind that this is where the story would begin for Ellice?
Yeah, that is a really good question. Indeed, I did. There are two scenes in the book that never changed throughout the entire writing process and revision process, and the long years. I had a very long publishing journey, which I guess we can get into later. But those two scenes never changed. And one scene takes place in kind of the middle of the book, a very pivotal scene. And then this opening, I always had this character. Ellice Littlejohn was always kind of rambling around in my head. And so I knew that it was going to be a scene where she finds this body and she was going to have to do something really unusual. And, I'd say leaving a dead body is pretty unusual without calling the authorities. Yeah.
Yeah. And it was one of those things that it just, you know that this was a surprise to her. So you wonder why she would do this, especially being somebody who is involved with legal matters. But the other half of the story, because that's actually not really where Ellice's story begins. The other half of the story begins in a small town in Georgia, where she's Ellie Littlejohn, and you find out that that Ellie is leaving this town as a young teenager to pursue her education in an elite school because she's so smart. But you also get the feeling that she's really leaving a lot behind. So one of the things that was really amazing about the story was just how the stories of Ellice as we meet her and Ellie go back and forth, how they pivot, and how you sort of begin to uncover how what happened to Ellie was setting up for why Ellice made the decision that she made and all the decisions she makes beyond that.
Absolutely.
Another theme that goes throughout the book is just the idea of this like good old boys world of corporate law, and where Ellice fits in, or rather what purpose she is serving for them image wise, because you find out also that her company is being protested for being racist.
Correct. You hit on all the right notes that I was trying to accomplish with the book. First and foremost, I wanted to make sure that Ellice was a strong, smart, capable young woman, but she was also pretty fragile and broken. And so she has this way of compartmentalizing her life. And so, she has family in one little compartment, and she has friends in another, and she has work in yet another. And it is all because that is her way of dealing with a very traumatic childhood, I would say. And so then she gets into, this predominantly white, good old boy executive world, where all those little compartments that she has set up all her life start to kind of, merge and then nosedive. And so whereas she always felt like, I've got this, I can handle this. The day she walks out of that executive suite without calling the authorities after she found her her boss and lover's body, was like kind of the lightning point where everything starts to meld together and takes a serious nosedive for her, unfortunately. But yeah, that is exactly what I was trying to accomplish with the book, so that I could shine a light on the fact that even though you have, what would otherwise be considered a very successful, intelligent Black woman, there's still these forces around her that threaten, all that success, and really kind of all that peace of mind and that mental space that she had created for herself.
Right. And you go into a bit about the way that she code switches when she's dealing with her coworkers, and also back when she's entering her new school, how Ellie quickly learns how she needs to change the way that she speaks and carries herself in order to make, I guess, make it with her white classmates. And it's very interesting because you find out, like Ellie has a brother who she's extremely protective of, but he's also almost like a liability if he was to become part of her corporate life. And she has other family members, be it found family or blood relative, that it's the same thing. And like the fact that she has this high powered job allows her to support them, but they also have to stay on the other side of the line. And just the idea that these men that she's working with are not privy to what she thought was in her past, which is where the title of the book comes from, All Her Little Secrets, because you don't really find out what they are until I'd say, that other pivotal scene, which I'm pretty sure I know what it is. Although they do trickle in and you get little drips of what they might be. But the idea that that the past can stay so buried, and something that you think is buried so deep might not be inaccessible to people who have all of this power, was very interesting and worked its way through the book very, very well.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, I wanted to play with this theme of family and who we call family. And so just as you picked up that Ellice has, kind of this, her biological family, although one of the characters in the book, Vera, is not related to her, but stands in as kind of a mother figure. And so that is one kind of compartmentalized box. And then you have this corporate atmosphere that she works in, where management is very adamant about, oh, we're all family here and we stick together and we take care of one another. And you just know that what they say is not matching up with what they do. And I took that from real life experience because I once worked for an organization. And they were very, very much, we are, a family and you're part of the blah, blah family. And, once you're in here with us, you're always, one of us. But they did not treat their employees well at all, at all. And it was interesting because I was in the legal department and someone in my department actually died. There was nothing sinister about it. This person just died. And, I was just mortified by how fast everyone, just kind of said, oh, blah, 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 died. And everybody went back to normal. And I was like, what happened to the family? And so I put that in the book because I wanted to play on this theme that, yeah, you can have people that are part of your family that aren't biologically related to you. But then there's this whole other issue with calling someone family and not treating them well. And I think that is kind of the line that Ellice walks, when she's, dealing with her brother and his issues. And there's this constant, look, this is how this has to be when we're talking. And then when she's in her workspace where everybody is considered family, and she looks around and she's like, but there's no family that looks like me or family that treats me very well.
Right. And I believe like the first event that she goes to, because it's like she steps out of the funeral space into events and parties. It was described as like the garden party scene from Get Out,
Yeah.
where she's like the only Black person there who isn't part of the staff. And
Right.
I believe, yeah.
That party scene was that was a lot of fun to write because it it really explored a couple things. It explored her being in this all white space, but also kind of her reaction when the only other people who are people of color are the wait staff. And so she tries to kind of lend herself, like, you know, kind of, hey, I'm one of you guys. And, you know, she's met with resistance there. And so she's like, you know, kind of, where do I fit in? And I wanted to play on that because, you know, everything is not all one way or another. And so, you know, and as this book, I hope this book demonstrates, is that everybody has something, and everybody is not all good, and everybody's not all bad. And there's some mix and some combination of the two.
Although I will say there are quite a few people who are pretty terrible.
You're absolutely right. But those people are really bad, but they think that they are doing something for the good.
Right. Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So
No.
it's
Okay.
like
Yeah.
they think, well, wait a minute, I have a perfectly sane reason for doing this, and I am doing a good thing for, you know, what have you. I don't want to give any spoilers, but you're absolutely right. So those people who are really kind of the worst really think in their own minds that, hey, I'm a good guy. I'm saving everybody. I'm doing the right thing, which we know is not.
But yeah. So tell us about, you mentioned a little bit about the road to publishing. Would you like to talk a little bit about that?
Sure, sure. It is it has been a long road. I kind of added up the years, and it to November 2nd, when the book comes out, it will be 13 years from the time I sat down and actually started to write this book to the actual day of publication. Now, I say it was 13 years because I wrote the very first draft, probably I'd say about 75% of the book, because I didn't know how it would end exactly 13 years ago. And then I put it away for like 7 or 8 years because I convinced myself that nobody is going to want to read this book. Like, who wants to read a book about a 40-ish Black woman who works with really awful people who do really awful things, right? Like, people read books to escape. And I thought, nobody is going to want to escape to this world that I've created. So I put it away, but I kept thinking about it. I kept saying to myself, somewhere in the back of my mind, I think I always knew, I'm going to have to finish this thing. And then a few years ago, I had a health scare. And, you know, I came to the conclusion that, hey, life is short, and I'm going to do those things that I enjoy and those things that feel true and real to me. And writing always has. It's always been, you know, my go-to, my love, my catharsis. So I picked it up again a few years later, and a few years ago, excuse me. And, you know, the book was bad, but I was like, that's okay because I can make it better. And I started to tinker around with it again. I started to take classes and I did workshops. And then I felt like, okay, now we're ready. And I started to query, looking for an agent. And I just hit a brick wall. I mean, I got rejected everywhere. And so I said, okay, so I'm obviously missing something. I need to get some help. So that's when I applied for the Yale Writers Workshop. And I did that. And that was a tremendous help because I learned so much about, you know, the craft of writing, like characterization and pacing and just story structure in general. And then I queried again and I was like, okay, I got this. And I got rejected all over again, like tons of rejections. And you would think I would give up, but I didn't, because by then I was in love with the story. I knew that these characters were true and they were real. I wasn't sure like who this story was for, but I knew that I had something here. And so I entered something called Pitch Wars, which is an online mentoring program. And so for 3 months, you're paired with a published author and you work on your manuscript. And at the end of the 3 months, you go into a showcase where agents come in and they read the first page of your manuscript and they can request the rest of it. And the in the showcase, I got tons of interest. Like all these agents were like, "Oh, this premise is great. This story looks good. Send it to me." And I sent it out and I was like, "Oh my God, I'm getting an agent." And every single one of them rejected me. And I was like, oh
Wow.
my gosh, oh my gosh, I may really have to put this book away and leave it there. But I said, I'm going to try one more time. And I was already scheduled to attend a conference, and I signed up to participate in their pitch portion of the conference. And it was there that I sat down in front of this really lovely woman named Lori Galvin. And she said, "Tell me about your book." And I decided to just describe the book as if I were talking about like a girlfriend who was telling me about this horrible place where she worked. And she requested it. I sent it to her, and she signed me on. And that was in 2019. And she sent me notes. We started to kind of revise it. And then a pandemic happened and the world shut down. And I was like, oh, gosh. And at some point during that, I wasn't writing at all. But we got kind of past that. And then in July of 2020, I went out on submission. And 12 days later, I was in an auction and the book sold to HarperCollins, William Morrow.
Wow, that's definitely quite a story. And I think one thing that really struck me was just the idea of let's just try this one more time.
Mhm.
And I can't imagine, because to put yourself out there in a book, there's so much labor that goes into that, just like putting
Yes.
the story together, but then also putting it out there for people to say, yeah, no, we don't want this, over and over and over
And
again.
over again. I think I have probably between 60 and 70 rejections. I mean, that's a lot. I've heard of people who have more. And I certainly could have just stopped and put it away. But there's this gospel song that I like, and it kind of became, some of the lyrics kind of became the mantra for this book. And the lyrics say, "I almost gave up. I was right at the edge of a breakthrough and couldn't see it." And I just kept telling myself, you know, I'll just do this one time more, because maybe this will be my breakthrough. And a lot of times it wasn't, but then that one time it was. So don't give up. I tell readers and writers, people who want to do this, if you've got this story that's inside of you and you really feel strongly about it, do not give up. Do not give up.
So, Wanda, you're still practicing law at the moment.
Yes and no.
Oh,
Yes, I'm still a licensed attorney, but I am taking a sabbatical because the book has gotten some very early buzz and I have another book that's due. And so I was like, I think I need some time off so that I can get all this underway. And so, yeah, I have another book that is due to my editor in a few months, and I'm gearing up for publication launch. So yeah, I'm on sabbatical.
I like when my interviews sort of open the door for the question I was going to ask them next. So you are working on another book. Is it going to be another legal thriller? And is Ellice going to be a character in it?
That is a very interesting question. It is not a legal thriller. It is a thriller. But if you have read All Her Little Secrets and you liked Vera, then you will get Vera's next story.
Wow, that's amazing. Oh, I was not expecting that to be your answer. I was like, is Ellice going to be the next, because you have all of these authors who write legal thrillers and you follow their characters through 30, 40, 50 books when you're like, oh, right, like, aren't they ready to retire yet? I mean, come on,
Right.
how many crazy things can happen to this one lawyer? But that is a great concept because Vera had universes behind her and you only got a glimpse of the surface of where she came from. So that is fabulous. How exciting. Do you have a name for it, or we're not allowed to say anything about that?
Well, it's untitled right now. I'm so bad at titles, although I did come up with this title for the first book, but it doesn't have a title yet. And it's interesting that you mentioned, legal thrillers, and some of the early readers of All Her Little Secrets have compared the book to John Grisham's The Firm. And I'm always so flattered by that. But, I kind of feel a little reticent because I'm like, I didn't necessarily set out to write legal thrillers. I really want to write women's stories. And when you think about All Her Little Secrets, that's really what it is. It's about women and what they deal with. And so this second book is along those same lines, that it is about Vera, who has a sister. And the two of them, when they were younger, became embroiled in the death of a white man in 1964 Mississippi. And so Vera's sister takes off to the north, and Vera winds up through some happenstance in Chillicothe. And then the story kind of kicks off because there's someone from their hometown who knows what they did and is hot on their trail. He doesn't have good intentions.
Thank you so much for that little taste of what's coming up and for All Her Little Secrets. I am happy to say that this book is worthy of all the buzz that it is getting. And as it is going to be out in November, perfect sweater weather, grab your sweater and a cup of coffee. And by the way, one thing that I also really liked, because I actually have family in Atlanta, and the only time I've been there has been in the summer. But it's the South, but it's also north of like Florida, for instance, and you do describe it as being cold in several scenes. So that was sort of like me having to reset my brain as to what the Atlanta in my mind was. So thanks for that.
It does get cold here in the winter now. We are big on ice storms here, so it gets pretty cold.
So like I was saying, you're going to want your favorite warm beverage, be it, coffee, hot chocolate, tea, hot toddy. I'm not going to judge whatever it is, and your sweater, and you're going to want to follow Ellice Littlejohn in All Her Little Secrets. And thank you to Wanda for joining us. This was Jessica with Syosset Libraries Turn the Page, and we are going to close this chapter.
It's time to close this chapter of Turn the Page. Join us for the next episode.